Tammy J. Bond, the host of the Playing in the Sandbox podcast, and excited to have you join me today for what is going to be a very lively and dynamic conversation with Tia Boatman Patterson, who is the president and CEO of the California Community Reinvestment Corporation. Now, Tia is recognized nationally and in the state of California as a policy expert in affordable housing, community development, small business, and economic development, having served as a special assistant to 4 speakers of the California State Assembly. She has notable career achievements that include Associate Director of Housing, Treasury, and Commerce in the Executive Office of the President's Office of the Management and Budget, Executive Director of the California Housing and Finance Agency, Senior Advisor for Housing to Governor Gavin Newsom, and General Counsel for the Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency. Tia is a mother, a wife, a community advocate, and someone who I have grown to know over the last few years and really appreciated the leadership style, the leadership challenges, the leadership changes and growth that I've watched her make over the years and what I see her call forth in the people around her. So I'm excited to share in this dialogue today with Tia Boatman Patterson. Let's get to it. We'll see you in the Sandbox. Well, Tia, welcome into the Sandbox. I am so excited to have you join me. I've been wanting to have you as a guest for quite a long time. And then this topic of what's the difference between leadership and management, and gosh, why are we making such a big deal about it being different? Aren't they the same? And shouldn't they be on the same team? I thought, who better to have a dialogue with on this topic but you? And so thank you for saying yes and coming into the Sandbox today. I'm thrilled to have you join me.
Thank you, Tammy. I always enjoy talking to you, and we always have such great dialogue. So I'm excited to be here.
We do. We have had great dialogue for many years now, and we always seem to get into the nitty gritty or the intricacies of different points as they come up, which is why I'm excited to talk about this topic with you. And before we dive into this difference between, or why are we making such a big deal about the difference between leadership and management, and my position is really we're a blended of the two. I don't see the need for it being so separate. I do want to hear from you, though, a little bit about this illustrious career path that you've been on, because you've done this great journey from, lawyer and what you're doing in the community for affordable housing and what you've done in the state of California and all the way to DC. I want to hear from you, your perspective as you've grown in your leadership, managing others and managing big budgets and big projects. Talk to us about your journey.
Well, it has been an interesting journey, and folks sometimes tell me, "Did you plan that career path?" And I'm like, I was just open to the opportunities, and when the door opened, I chose to walk through. But I have worked local government. I've worked for a couple of mayors. I have worked state government. I've worked for a couple of governors. I've worked for 4 speakers of the California State Assembly. And most recently, I worked for the President of the United States before I came back to the private sector, where I'm running a certified development financial institution that finances affordable housing. So it has been quite a journey along the way. I have seen good and bad and things that can be better. But I am interested in this topic about leadership versus management, because sometimes I think we do conflate the two. And there is an opportunity, and leaders can run across an organization. Leaders aren't always in management position. And so a good manager will recognize those leaders on their team and push leadership development. But I think one of the things we often do is sometimes the best operator gets promoted to a management position, but doesn't always have that management training. And so I think it is very essential to make sure that folks that you are promoting, because maybe they had great leadership skills, have that management training, because there's a difference between being a manager and a leader. And so
there is. Tell me from your experience and perspective what you see the difference as between manager and leader, because you're right, there is a difference. And what is that difference?
A manager, depending on where you are, needs to be able to manage down, and in some instances manage up. I have often worked as an appointed in an appointed position where I had to serve a particular board, or whether that was city council or a members of the state legislature. You have to manage in those guards. You had to manage up as well as managing down. But a manager is going to look around them, see what perhaps the operational needs are, understand the processes and procedures, and to be able to build teams to help move things forward. A leader, who is often a driver and may not be in a management position, has a certain skill set where they can motivate, where they can drive, and where they can inspire. And those are sometimes different skill sets than a manager may have, who may just know operationally, process and procedure, how to get things done.
Right. And it is important in your distinction too. And I think this is where it's a rub for me at times. When we have people in manager positions and they're underutilized and undervalued as a leader, and just the same, you have people in titled as a leadership position or on a leadership team, and they miss the essential functions of what good management is
Mhm.
to manage people. It's one thing to be able to inspire and motivate and cast a shared vision, and I think that's necessary at every level, especially when you're managing people. As a manager, I still see it as a leader position, but I think we undervalue it a lot of times because we do draw such a hard line between the two, and I think it causes problems, and you know in organizations, in teams, when we aren't clear about what it is as a manager, what are the leadership qualities that are necessary, and in this leadership position, what are the management skills that are a necessity as well.
Yes, yes. And sometimes you may want to lead someone who is a leader or higher level in your particular organization, but you may not want them to necessarily manage. You want them up here as a strategic thinker, and you want those day to day kind of operational things to be pushed down so that you can have someone at a management level who's managing people and teams and processes. And so sometimes figuring out who should be in that position, who has better management skills, who may have better leadership skills, and sometimes it doesn't always line up. I think of sometimes you may have someone who's a management leader where you've conflated the two and not separated the two, who is not recognizing that someone else on the team could be doing things differently, more efficiently. And because they're in that management leadership role, they, I don't want to say dim the light, but they don't allow that other person below them to grow or give them those growth opportunities.
Yeah. What do you suppose, from your experience, what drives that? Why is that? Why do they not allow? Is it that they don't see it, or is there another hidden cause that we don't speak to?
I think it could be a mixture thereof. It could be their false understanding of what it means to be in a management leadership role and that they should be the spokesperson and one out there all of the time as opposed to letting their team shy. It could be just a false understanding, a lack of management training, and it could be some ego. But I have found that we have over the years put a real emphasis on leadership training and sometimes forget that sometimes this is about just basic management and getting out the way and letting people manage people. And so people think that they want to be a leader, but not yet have management skills. And so you're not really leading your team effectively because you're not meeting people where they are. You're not being efficient in the things that you do because you think my role is to be as a leader, but you also need those essential management skills.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's how you and I met, was actually leadership development training years ago, and through executive coaching as well. But it is absolutely paramount. We do so much emphasis And I think the pendulum has swung so far to the other side of let's promote leadership training. Let's promote leadership training. And I probably have heard me say, we promote people that build widgets really well, but we don't make sure that they know how to do the people well. And so the people come first, because as a manager, yes, you're managing tasks and processes and systems to get the work done, the day to day. I get it. And in that leadership role, even as you mentioned, you want that high level thinking, those people that can see, the 50,000 foot level and see where we want to go, and then help to understand the people to put the right people in place to get there is necessary. They don't need to manage the day to day, but still having the skill set is key, because when we get off course, the management style is what's going to bring us back into course. It's not the
Exactly.
vision.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's the tactical, tangible tool set that you have to manage process, systems, and people that
And
help you
I
come back on
I
course.
think that was one of the things that you helped us identify during our leadership development, is that there are some key critical management pieces, human resource management pieces that are missing. And we need to shore up the walls and fill in the gaps on this management piece. Because you can think big all day, every day, but if you can't manage people and processes, you won't be able to implement those big ideas. And so the management piece helps to move the people and the processes forward to help with that leader with their vision. And so if you are a leader who actually wants to get things done, you will recognize the need to have strong management.
So true. So true. And I was thinking back, and I won't tell tales here, I promise. But what do you suppose was one of the biggest learning opportunities for you as a leader? Because at the time when we met, you were with Cal HFA,
Yes.
and you were the leader, you were the executive director, CEO of that organization. And what do you remember? I mean, I have my thoughts, but as the leader, what was one of the biggest moments for learning you had, even in understanding your own ability as a manager? Do you have any thoughts?
I think understanding that management is hard. Supervising is hard. It is hard work. And we as people often want to avoid confrontation and those, what, as you call it, difficult conversations. Um, but as a manager and a supervisor, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be able to have those difficult conversations, because ignoring it means that you're not moving forward. And so I think that was one of the biggest things lessons that I took from our time together was, yeah, leadership. Sometimes you have natural skills, abilities. You take these classes, you learn to become a leader. But the technical skills that are required of a manager to meet people where they are, to be able to communicate, to be able to say, here's where you are today, and here's where I want you to be tomorrow. And let's build a plan on how to get there. Those are management skills. And so I think that was the biggest eye opener for me, is understanding management is really difficult. Supervising is really difficult, and there's technical skill set that is involved with that can be learned.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. It's true. Management is hard. It's I think it's we don't pay enough attention to the challenges that lie within it. And I think we oftentimes, and I see this within when I go into organizations, we have promoted people outside of their skill sets,
Yes.
and we expected something from them they were never going to be able to give us. And so we set both of us up for failure. So the quicker that we can recognize that and understand that and say, okay, is this a skill set you can build? Is this something you want to build? If not, it's okay to help you into a different opportunity. There's also then the flip side of that is when you have people that see themselves at a higher level, a higher capacity, a higher skill set in their mind's eye than what's actually being produced. And that's where those bold or difficult conversations come into play.
Yes.
Of this is where you see you, this is where I see you. How do we now narrow that gap? Right. So that we can get more of what we both want and need. And if not, what's the next best place for you? And people often say, you've heard me say, we all have expiration dates, and it's up to us to, how do you I don't find that to be offensive. It's true. And it's better for me if I can recognize, gosh, I might be reaching one. So maybe I want to have a conversation with my CEO or my boss to say, I think I am. Or if my CEO boss says, I see you reaching maybe an expiration date, let's have that conversation. Boy, and because you've had those in the past. I know you've had those conversations in the past because we've talked about how to set
Yes.
those up.
I have
How
had those difficult conversations. I have been in that position where I had to realize that I had reached my expiration date. And so understanding the um when and where to have those conversations.
that and also understanding that it's not a bad thing to have them. It's actually a positive thing to have them when it's time, and being self-aware. And one of the things that I say is, you don't lead others until you can lead yourself well, right? You got to learn how to lead yourself well first before you attempt to lead other people. And that's part of leading yourself well, when you can acknowledge and say, yeah, here I am. I'm over my skis. I'm outside of my skill sets. And instead of faking it, the fake it till you make it it does not a good leader or manager make.
Right, right. And I think about a particular opportunity I had when working for the governor, and the governor wanted me to take on a different position that was so way outside of my portfolio, so to speak. And people, you don't usually tell governors no, but I would have been so far. I'm like, I know what I'm good at. I'm good at this. And you're asking me to do this. And this is so outside of my portfolio and what I'm an expert in. I wouldn't be comfortable for myself, and I would be afraid to embarrass you and put you in a different position. But that was a difficult conversation to have, and to recognize that, yeah, that looks great on paper, but yeah, no, I don't think I'm the right person for that position.
That was wisdom, and being able to have the courage to stand and say that. And to your point, most people don't tell your governors no. I mean, having worked for governors myself, it's like, nope. But at the same time, having a reputation as someone who did, I don't think that's a problem either, because that's about integrity. That's about the integrity of the quality of the work that you were able to do. And I love what you said about having that awareness enough to say, it's going to put me in this kind of a position, but it has the risk of making you also look bad. And so let's just say, no, thank you.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Yeah, exactly. So tell me, what are some of as a CEO, what do you find as challenging, or what has been over your career, maybe some of the challenges when it comes to being the visionary at the top? You've got your next level of leaders, right? And then you've got your managers that are the implementers. What is the communication challenge that you find in that dynamic?
I think you've hit the nail on the head. Communication is often the biggest challenge. Understanding, as you have said, communication is 50-50. So communication needs to go down, but it also needs to flow up. And so ensuring that if you all want to be aligned and rowing in the same direction, that the folks at the all throughout the layers of the organization know, what are we doing here? What are we trying to achieve? And what is the plan to achieve that? And having that communicated throughout the organization, I think that's often a biggest challenge. And so you have to ensure that you are regularly doing check ins, that you are regularly talking not just to your leadership team, but that you sometimes, either on a quarterly or a biannual basis, are talking to the entire organization so that they know from you. I find that being open and transparent often may not be something that all throughout the organization that they're used to dealing with, especially in politics. But I find that that has translated to small business as well. Um, Most recently, we took on a budgeting process where we laid out, this is the budget, these are the circumstances, this is why we're talking about salary raises and cost increases. The interest rates are historically high. And so having those conversations at all levels of the organization is most challenging. but also where you're going to get the biggest return.
Yeah. And I love what you said is setting up that cadence of regular communication to the whole organization. And no matter the size, and I think that's something that, I've had CEOs of say, oh, well, we're too big. And, how are we going to do that too? Oh, well, we're small enough. Everybody knows me. I was just, I'll share this because this just happened this weekend. My husband and I were out at we're at a restaurant, shall remain nameless, but I happen to know the CEO of the company that runs the restaurants and also clothing portion of the company, and I know several of the executive levels because they were a former client of mine. So we were having brunch, and I asked our server, "Hey, so just curious, who's your CEO?" She couldn't name him. And I was like, oh, ouch. But now she quickly recovered and said, I don't know. I said, oh, well, how long have you been with the company? 5 years. 5 years. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
getting a letter from me this week just to say, because
A
that's a
server?
problem.
Yeah, that is a problem.
Because it was a server, a lead server in a position of management, right?
Mm-hmm.
Leading a team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you're not that big of a brand of a employee base, right?
Yes.
You don't have that many locations. That's what I wanted to
Yes.
say.
Yes.
That your CEO by name should not be known after working there for 5 years.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what you said and why I bring that up is a good leader that also has the understanding of how to manage well, right? Because managers are going to understand the people, boots on the ground, how we tactically get things done. Leaders cast vision. We know that. That's how it's
Mm-hmm.
been separated out. However, you want to be able, where it comes important to balance the two is you still, to your point, you got to have that communication dialogue and let people know who you are, what that vision is from you, because it gets watered down every time it transfers hands. And that
Absolutely.
communicating up and that communicating down is important. And if you, as the leader, are casting vision for what is and will be and what you want and the kind of culture you're wanting to set in your organization, if that's not flowing down from your mouth down the organization, it's getting watered down and you're going to end up with a problem. So it's important. And you know that you've been in all different levels of organizations.
I recently just experienced that where we had gone out for a comp study for the entire organization. The entire organization had never had a comprehensive comp- compensation study. We had done it at the executive level, but we had never done it comprehensively. And trying to set a baseline, understanding that we're coming into some tough years and what do raises look like? What do revenues look like? So we had to have a baseline. And so I had communicated this with all of my senior staff, but they hadn't necessarily communicated it all the way down. And so I had opened it up and I told folks the reason why we were having a comp study. We were establishing salary ranges, we were establishing levels. People would know where they are, how they could get promoted. If their position wasn't actually being able to promote it within the organization, they would at least have the skill set that they would be able to carry on to a different organization. So I laid all of that out. And and I opened it up for because we're really small, one of the employees to call me directly if they had questions. And they were like, I can't believe I'm not getting a raise. And I said, well, you've been here a year. You got a significant bonus at the end of the year, and you are well over the targeted median pay. I said, I didn't get a raise either, but that's just where we are as an organization. And so we'll continue to monitor that. He said, well, no one ever said any of this to me. And I'm like, okay, we've been talking about this since September. How can you not know this information? I have had meetings ad nauseum with your manager. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I need to do more communicating down where I'm talking to the entire organization about a big piece so that all everyone is hearing the same thing. And so I think it's important to sometimes do those check-ins and understand maybe it's getting watered down, just as you said, it's getting watered down as it's going. So let's have some more direct dialogue and let's make sure that information is coming up as well as the information is going down.
Good. It's really true. It's necessary, and that is that, again, great sign of good leadership is to acknowledge, to see, okay, here's a problem. All right, is it me to fix the problem? Is it somebody else to fix the problem? Right? What is the fix that we're needing? But when it comes to communicating big messages, it's always best when it comes from the top and set and communicated through, because again, people run those things through their filters. And if they are a leader in position by title only because they've been there the longest, or for whatever reason, and they don't have the baseline of good management skills, good communication, effective, how do we communicate the good, bad, and ugly, then it's stopping with them because they're filtering it. And it's the stop is, I don't know how to say that. I'm not going to be the one. They're going to be mad at me if I communicate that. And there's waiting.
Yes.
And they're actually are doing so much more harm. And that's why I say when we promote people without the essential functioning role or qualities and skill sets of effective management, and that includes how to communicate the good, bad, and ugly, we really shoot ourselves in the foot. And when you came in, because you've been at CCRC now for 2 years
A
almost,
year.
right? Was
It'll
it a
be,
year in
yeah, December
December?
22.
Okay.
So December 23 was a year. So a year and some change.
So a year and some change. And, and it's I love hearing all the cool things that you guys are doing. I actually drive through our community and I'm pointing out things to my husband and I'm like, yep, that's why when you work in affordable housing, you get to learn some of you see what the communities are doing to build. Yep. The reason the houses are like that, honey, is because, like
Right,
we're talking
right,
about the way we're doing our communities here. So
right.
it's been fun, but I say all of that to you're in an organization, really cool as a nonprofit. So, but highly regulated, yes, sort of, right? And what I find to be interesting though is that your organization, you have so many people that have been there for so many years
Oh my
and
goodness.
so
Yes.
long,
Yes.
right?
The longest employee, I just made her my chief of staff, but she's been there 30 years. And it is, I mean, 10 years is a short time for this particular organization. And for so long, it was so small. They really ran the organization like a little family, like literally like a little family. And so the biggest challenge has been over the last couple of years, the organization has grown by probably 30% in staffing. And for a small organization to grow by 30%, that is significant. That is, your workforce has grown by 30% in less than 3 years. And you're still mentally operating the organization as if it's 15, 16 people, but now it's 29 people. And so it it's difficult because you've never changed your infrastructure or processes to go along with this larger workforce. And that takes, once again, management. It takes management to be able to say, we need to modernize these processes and implement new processes to go along with our larger workforce. And what I found is that, well, we always did that by hand. We didn't. And so making that transition is pushing people's skill set so that those that didn't have management skills are having to stretch and grow and obtain those management skills because they weren't necessary in a smaller organization as much as they are in a larger organization.
Well, and what they had worked for what was needed, and it
Yes.
worked well, and it
Yes.
got them very
Yes.
profitable, and it did
Yes.
well in the community, in the state, and all of those things are absolute truth. And now we're working. It's like we've been given a whole new territory that we're going into break ground on, and how do we do that with more people and old skill sets? But the old skill sets aren't they're not going to serve us in the new opportunity that we
Right.
have before us.
Right.
And so that's a shift in mindset.
It
And you've
is.
done well to help people shift that mindset and to cast the vision of what you want and the strategic planning process and all of that necessary to give people that blue sky of here's what's possible, y'all. And now what do we do and how do we do it? And what are the skills that are required? And you've been asking more of them. And I know that's something you do very well. I've watched you over the years, and it's a skill set that you definitely, that you really shine with, in that challenging people, you see more in them and you call them to be better. And so I love that. I am curious. I want to make sure, because I've like, oh, what's the one question I want to make sure to ask Tia on this topic? Because you and I've talked about kids and kids at all ages, and you've got college and out of college, and right. So you're not a full empty nester yet. I don't believe you
No,
and your husband.
no. My husband keeps wishing to be an empty nester, but we are
Not yet.
not yet empty nesters.
But I'm curious though, if you think about just this younger generation, so much has been talked about with the Gen Z, and like there's so much talked about these younger generations. And I'm of the opinion that every generation that's gone before us said the same thing about the newest generation that the others said, right? The boomers said it about Xers, and Xers have said it. Like, we've all said it about the next one, right? But what is it that you would say this young generation has in skill sets that maybe the older generations aren't acknowledging and noticing yet?
Hmm. Well, that's definitely technology. They are more comfortable with technology and automation than a lot of my older workforce is used to, or has embraced as easily. So technology is one. Um, Culturally, I think there is this swing to better work life balance that some of us in the older generation may not have. I do see my younger generation like, this is work, and then I'm going to go home. And sometimes I think we have a different mindset and don't often make those distinctions as much as we should. So, their use of technology and their understanding of better work life balance, I think, is something that the younger generation is bringing to the table.
Yeah, that's really good. And that will serve them well. I definitely agree with you on that. What would be the advice for someone who's coming up in an organization? And I was going to say specifically in government, but no, let's just make it organization, because it might be different if you answered it, private versus public sector. But what would you say? What would be the piece of advice that you would give if someone's raising up through management and they want to be in leadership, right? They want the corner office one day, or whatever the goal is. I don't think that's our generation. We talked about that. They don't talk about that these days. But what would be the piece of advice you would give?
And I think this probably goes government and private sector. I wouldn't make a distinction with that. But just as they're bringing to the table work life balance and more technology, I think one of the challenges that they're bringing to the table is this belief of them being exceptional. I
Yeah, but they were
don't
raised by us. So
They've been raised by us and they got a blue ribbon for picking daisies on the soccer field. I'm sorry.
they did. They did. Or a trophy.
They did.
Yeah.
So there's this belief of exceptionalism. And it's like, no, you meet expectation. And meeting expectation is good, because that means you've been given a job and you've been laid out what your duties were and you've met them, which is exactly what you've met my expectations to do that job. Helping them to understand that meeting expectations is what is expected, and that to go above and beyond that is exceptional. And just because you come to work every day and do your job does not mean you're exceptional. You meet expectations. And I think that is a tough lesson for some of our young people, because they have grown up because we told them they were exceptional. And so now they can just be regular, but they think they're exceptional. And I don't, that's one of my biggest challenges with some of my younger folks is, how do I communicate to them without crushing their little spirit? Because you don't want to crush spirit. You want to embrace and grow, but how do you communicate to them that meets expectation is okay, and that you don't really get a merit increase or exceptional bonuses because you've met expectations. You get bonuses when you exceed expectations. So trying to communicate that has been one of my challenges, but I'm going to get some executive coaching from you, and you're going to help me through that.
Can you see my body language? I'm like, can I answer now? Can I answer now?
Please.
I will tell you, you actually, your answer was actually in the challenge. And that is how we set the expectations on the front end, but it's also and I know you do this, and I know you've gotten, your skill has increased in this over the years. So I'm celebrating that, in asking them questions. What does exceeds expectations mean to you? Right? What does that look like? If this is, what are the expectations? Ask. So many people get hired and we never ask them, what are the expectations of your job? We don't ask them to repeat it back to us. Right? We give it to them and we think they're going to read it, internalize it, and understand it the way that it's written as we understand it, but they're reading it and internalizing it through their filter. And when we don't pause and ask the question, what do they understand that to be? We then get into the challenge with, they think that they're something more exceptional. And it is something that started with the millennials, honestly, because they're the generation that came in, I call them they were raised in the back of mom's minivan, going from soccer to piano into, study hall and all the different things, and going through drive-through to get dinner. Right. Because they were getting shuttled everywhere, and then they were getting the participation awards. And I'll never forget my oldest son. He was so mad at me. Oh my goodness. He was mad at me. He was like, I don't know, 8 maybe. And he had gotten 7 or 8, and he'd gotten a trophy, and they had lost every single dang soccer game. Every soccer game.
And every member of the team got us trophy.
And every member of the team, and the goalie, the kid they always put at goalie, sat in the goalie box eating the chalk on the field. And they picking daisies, right? And I'm like, what'd you get that trophy for? You're not getting a trophy. Did you win? No, we got it for playing. Like, oh, he was so mad because I challenged him on it. And, but that's the kind of mom I am too. But we raised them to be the expectant of and the Gen Z is the same way. They have that. But what I find to be different in the two is I do see that this Gen Z, the younger they're really eager to learn, and they're really eager to know how to succeed. Right. They're not expecting to know. They really are eager to know. Tell me how to succeed at this, because I want to win at this.
Right.
And I think that's a positive, especially as it comes to, those are skills I can build on. That eagerness, I can build on that.
Yes.
It might be a tweak of communication. It might be a tweak of how your timeliness of getting your work done. There might be some of that stuff, but as long as that eagerness is there, boy, I can work with that all day long.
Yes. Agreed. Very much agree.
For sure. Yeah. So coming in for kind of just rounding out this fun conversation with you today, what would you say as a CEO to another CEO, someone who's just gotten into their new CEO position, and you've had a wonderful career of at very high levels of leadership yourself? And how would you encourage them as a new CEO stepping into a new role? What would the encouragement be that you would give them as a leader of an organization?
Give yourself time and space to learn the organization and its people. And organizational assessment by potentially a third party. That way you have that buffer for getting a level set of what's going on before you come in trying to make any changes, and sharing that organizational assessment with your people. So I think that would be my biggest advice. Give yourself the time and space to learn the organization and its people And sometimes that's 6 months, sometimes that's a year. But I think, especially if it is an organization that has a long-time leader that has sat in the position prior to you, or if culturally the organization has done things a certain way for a long period of time, it is going to be very important for you to give yourself the time and the space.
Yeah, that really lends itself into building the trust and giving people the chance to get to know you, that you're not just there to clean house, but you're there to get to know them, and you care to know who they are, what they do what they do, why they chose to be here. Especially, if you've been here for all of these years, what keeps you here? That's one of my favorite questions to ask. Why? What keeps you here? I, I can't imagine, quite honestly, and I'm sure you can relate too. I don't know what it would be like to be in a position within an organization for, 20, 25, 30
Right.
years.
And I
I
actually
mean,
asked um, the woman who's been with the organization for 30 years, she is a gem. And she said, "This is my mission. This is like missionary work for me." And so when she told me that, and I looked at the position she was in, and this is what meeting people where they are, it's like this woman has no intention of retiring, but there are some people under her that need to learn and grow. And she actually needs to be promoted and not just do the same thing she's done for 25 years. This woman knows the organization. And so she was actually promoted from running loan admin to being the chief of staff and the investor relations manager. Because I'm like, you have a 30-year history with this organization. You should be on the executive team. You're down here kind of in this management role where you kind of, but no. So, and it really helped us organizationally. One, it helped a woman who had no intention of retiring, who was very much valued by the organization, promoted her to an executive position. And it allows those folks that were underneath her to now grow and develop in that loan admin position. So asking that question, what what makes you stay here? What are your expectations? What do you want from this role? I think it provides you with the visibility into what can make your organization better.
yep. I remember that conversation, and it's a great promotion. It's a great position for her.
Hmm.
It's such a great position. Yeah. And but again, that's being a leader who can look at the people around them to go, what skill sets do they have to be able to do what's necessary task wise, most efficiently, most effectively.
And she's
And,
thriving, like thriving. Yeah.
that's great. That's great. I'm glad to hear that. Well, Tia, it has been a pleasure having you in the sandbox with me today. I always love when we get a chance to connect and talk. And I always love when I get to kind of tap into how Tia thinks, because there's a lot of brilliance going on in there. So thank you so much for taking your time to join me on this important topic of, the difference between leadership and management. And, just as I'm continuing to disrupt, because I think we've become too rigid, and as we said early on, focus on leadership training, but really we're missing essential management functions, and organizations can't work well when that happens.
That's absolutely true. And I appreciate you, Tammy. I appreciate your coaching and your mentorship and our friendship. So thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate your time today, my friend, and we will see you in the sandbox again soon.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for joining me in the sandbox today. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation around drawing a line in the sand between management and leadership. And there's going to be more to come. I have some future guests coming on in the coming months on this very topic, because it's a topic that I am really passionate about exposing. It's important that we level that playing field and not have so much separation or segregation between the titles, and that we really focus on healthy management overall, management of self, management of team, management of priorities and organization. That builds healthy cultures. And your leaders and managers and people within all different levels of your organization are hungry for that. So give it to them. And if you don't know how, There's a lot of resources out there to help you identify how to exactly build a healthy management culture within your organization. So thanks again for coming into the Sandbox today. It would mean so much if you just took a moment to click share, click like, write a comment or two wherever you listen to this content. And I want to also invite you to take the link and share it with a friend, somebody that you think could actually benefit from this content that we shared here in the Sandbox today. And remember, friend, leadership and management, it isn't something that you're born with, it's something that you grow into. So thanks for taking the time to grow into your next level of leadership in the Sandbox today. Make it a great day.